let's get into how to navigate the 18.6-year land cycle. Now, as I said to you previously, it's not something I agree with to a T, but markets definitely run in cycles. Now, look, that itself saying there is definitely some credit to a lot of this, as I said previously. And I mean, really, timing in this cycle does matter, and it does matter to even the cities we're talking about. So I'll just show you something here. So this is basically how the market kind of works. So first things first, you've got good times to buy at different stages of the cycle. So you can see just here in years 1, years 7, and also years 18, which is actually the start of year 1 technically, or 0 again. Those are great times there to buy. Now, it's not the same for all cities, of course, but they're definitely great times to buy in those markets. Now, on the contrary, there's also good times to sell or otherwise refinance and pull equity out. So those times are obviously your mid-cycle dip. So that's at the very peak. It's usually year 5 or 6 in the first recovery phase. Pardon me. And it's usually year 13 or even late 12 to 14 of the actual major explosive phase. So that's kind of what you want to do with this cycle. Again, it's not true to a T, but that's the fundamental sort of macro thing that you want to do in this. So timing is definitely important. Now, in Australia, just remember, different markets have different cycles. So this is a key part I'm getting into. So Brisbane itself has a very different cycle to Sydney and Melbourne. So does Perth, right? Now, generally, Sydney and Melbourne correlate somewhat. They're not exactly correlated. Actually, recently, they haven't been anti-correlated or going against the correlation of each other, but they haven't been correlating as much lately, but generally they do over the long term. However, Brisbane and particularly Perth as well, the correlation of them generally go against Sydney and Melbourne. So easiest way to show you this is just look at kind of what's happened in Brisbane with it booming kind of, between the years of 2000, kind of late 2007, right? Through to kind of like, I'd say right through to probably 2012 or so. It did actually very good numbers in that time. It nearly actually doubled in that time, whereas Sydney was very stagnant. Though Brisbane was stagnant in 2012 right up kind of to about 2019, although Sydney did some incredible numbers. Now, yes, since COVID, it did go up since then in Sydney, but I'd argue that was because of the very low interest rates, and it's kind of like a dead cat, not dead cat bounce, but a cat kind of bounce, I'd call it, because if you flood more money in the system, it will go into the market. Now, it didn't do as well because it was a different stage of its cycle. So you can see here just they don't correlate really at all. They correlate somewhat, but not very much. They kind of go against each other in terms of booms and busts. I wouldn't even really call it a bust. I'd just say a cycle slowdown in Australia. So markets do run in different cycles, to be transparent with you. Now, look, as I said previously, different markets you buy at different times. So I did pick out the times when to buy in the first actual slide of discussing how to navigate this cycle. But I'm actually going to tell you where to buy at different stages now. So in your actual recovery phase or post your actual recession phase, so it's in year 0 or year 1 especially, in times like that where you've had very slow markets or very poor performance in a key market for a long time, that's when you want to buy generally your major cities. So in your early years, it's definitely your larger cities you want to buy in your major cities. Now, I've pointed that both out here, and you can see on both sides because the one on the left is technically the start of the one on the right, so it's just because it's not an ongoing cycle. But the minor cities are actually better to pick in the mid-cycle dip because generally your major cities do very well in the first stage of this cycle. Now, this is quite accurate over the long term, and I'll explain to you why in later parts of this. But just keep in mind, all markets are susceptible to cycles. So what do I mean by this? Now, we've been through the property clock before. I've been through a lot of other things before, and I've explained this to people in great detail. The reason I did that is because this is kind of what happens in all kind of markets. So as you can see, if you want to chuck on the property clock, you can, but I've made it a little bit easier for people here. So you've got clearly a slowdown, a slump, recovery, and boom. Now, if you want to give everyone, if everyone wants to understand how it works with a property clock, slowdown's basically your downturn, slumps your stabilization, recovery is your upturn, and boom is your boom phase as well. So that stays the same. That really light sort of green there is like lime green is kind of your winner's curse phase, to give you an idea. So that's kind of where things are at in terms of a property investment cycle. I'd say at the bottom buyer's market, that would be buyer / refinancing market there as well, because you can pull out equity and do very well with it and chuck it into a better opportunity. So look, as I said to you, all markets are susceptible to cycles. So just remember there are better cities to buy than others in certain points of the cycle.